She thought she landed her big break in a prank show, but it was all a deadly lie. City Isha went from celebrating her birthday to becoming an unwitting assassin in one of the most shocking political killings of our time. How did a struggling single mom end up at the center of an international conspiracy? The truth is more terrifying than you can imagine. This is the story you won't believe until you see it for yourself. On the evening of February 12, 2017, a young woman named City Isha experienced an unforgettable moment that left her stunned. She was seated at the Hard Rock Cafe in Kuala Lumpur, the vibrant capital of Malaysia, enjoying a night that had already been one of the most memorable in recent times. As she sipped her drink, she noticed a waitress approaching her table, holding a birthday cake with a single glowing candle in the center. Instantly, City realized the cake was for her. Overwhelmed by the gesture, she set her drink down and stepped forward shyly as her friends, gathered around her, began singing "Happy Birthday." This wasn't just any celebration. It was City's 25th birthday. As she stood there, basking in the warmth of her friends' voices, she reflected on how far she had come. Surrounded by successful television producers who had thrown this party in her honor, City could hardly believe how drastically her life had transformed. When the song ended, she leaned forward to blow out the candle, but instead of making a wish, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had everything she could have ever wished for, a reality that seemed almost impossible just a few years earlier. City's journey had begun in a small village deep in the jungles of Indonesia. The youngest of 3 children, she was raised by parents who worked tirelessly as farmers, barely making enough to provide for their family. Financial struggles meant City couldn't attend high school. Her family needed her to work and contribute to their livelihood. Later, she married and had a son, but life took another challenging turn when her husband left, offering no support for their child. As a single mother, City worked tirelessly to provide for her son, while also supporting her parents and siblings. Eventually, the weight of her responsibilities forced City to make a heart-wrenching decision. She left Indonesia to seek work abroad. This meant leaving behind her son, who remained with her parents. City found a job as a masseuse at a hotel in Malaysia, a position she didn't enjoy but endured for the sake of her family. Like many of her colleagues, she occasionally daydreamed about a life of luxury, imagining herself as a model, singer, or actress. But these dreams seemed distant and unattainable. Everything changed one evening in January 2017 when City, convinced by her friends, decided to go out for a rare night of fun. While waiting in line outside a bar, a sharply dressed man named James approached her. James, a Japanese television producer specializing in hidden camera prank shows, asked if she had ever done any acting. Feeling bold in the moment, City replied that she hadn't but would love to try. Intrigued by her confidence, James invited her to discuss the opportunity further. Over coffee, he explained the nature of his work and the kind of simple pranks he needed actresses to perform. Though skeptical at first, City ultimately agreed, seeing it as an exciting chance to break away from her routine. From that moment on, City's life became a whirlwind of opportunities. She transitioned from being a masseuse to a rising star in the world of prank videos. Flying across the country, she filmed skits that quickly gained popularity. Her charm and comedic timing impressed James' bosses, who praised her for consistently delivering better-than-expected results. For City, it felt like a dream. Back at the Hard Rock Cafe on her birthday night, James, seated beside her, showed her a text from his boss, written in a language she couldn't understand. When she asked him to translate, James grinned and said, "This is my boss telling me you're already a superstar in Korea." Embarrassed yet thrilled, City couldn't help but smile. The recognition felt surreal. As the night wore on and the clock approached 10 p.m., City decided to call it an early night. She thanked her friends for the celebration, bid them goodbye, and returned to her hotel. Once in her room, she immediately called her mother, as she often did. City shared every detail of her incredible evening and expressed her excitement about a big prank filming scheduled for the next day, the most ambitious project she had taken on yet. It promised the highest pay she'd received so far, $100 US. Grateful as always, City assured her mother that she would send the entire amount home to support her family. Her mother, filled with pride, encouraged City to rest and wished her luck for the filming. After a brief chat with her son, City climbed into bed, eager but restless. The prank for the next day had been rehearsed meticulously over the past week, and the anticipation kept her wide awake. Unlike her previous solo pranks, this one would involve two other actors, adding a new layer of complexity to the performance. City's past pranks typically involved simple setups. She would approach an unsuspecting older man in a public place, perform a playful gesture like kissing him on the cheek or spraying him with perfume, and then dash away as hidden cameras captured his reaction. The simplicity of these pranks made them both entertaining and easy to execute. But the next day's filming promised to be more elaborate, and City was determined to make it her best performance yet. Among the performers was a woman who would be collaborating with City for the prank. Their target, an unsuspecting man, was actually another actor. Both James and the Japanese production team had emphasized that, for this prank to succeed, the man needed to be in on the plan. City had already met and practiced a few times with her fellow actress, but hadn't yet encountered the male actor, who she'd only meet on the day of the prank. That evening, City went to bed knowing she had a big day ahead. Early the next morning, her alarm jolted her awake. She quickly got dressed in a sleek, dark outfit, applied red lipstick, and hurried out of her room. She met James, the other actress, and the production crew in the hotel lobby before they all piled into a cab headed for the international airport, the scene for their elaborate prank. Once they arrived, the group gathered at a restaurant in the departure area to await the third actor's arrival. City struck up a conversation with the other actress, who introduced herself as Duan Tai Huang, a 28-year-old from Vietnam. Duan shared how she had left her home country to support her family, which had led her to the world of acting. Unlike City, who dreamed of exploring various creative pursuits like singing or modeling, Duan had always been singularly focused on acting. She had even dropped out of school to pursue her passion, participating in shows like Vietnam Idol, though she didn't progress far, and dabbling in other prank videos before finding her way to James' team. As they chatted, City couldn't help but notice Duan's unusual outfit. A playful t-shirt with LOL printed on it and an oversized teddy bear she carried everywhere. Though odd, City assumed it was part of the script and didn't dwell on it. Around 9 a.m., one of the producers spotted the male actor, dressed as an everyday traveler, beginning his part of the prank at a self-check-in kiosk. The producers gave City and Duan their final instructions. City would use a bottle of perfume as part of her role, while Duan was handed a damp cloth and some oil. Excitement and nerves bubbled within City as she prepared to prove her ability to execute a complex scene alongside her co-actors. The two women split up as rehearsed, with City positioning herself behind the man and Duan staying on the other side. When Duan gave the signal, City jumped into action, startling the man. Duan followed by grabbing his face and wiping it with the damp cloth, while City sprayed perfume. They giggled and apologized before walking away, blending into the crowd. City headed to the restroom, conscious that cameras might still be rolling. She checked her appearance, washed her hands, and smiled at her reflection, confident she had nailed the performance. However, when she arrived at the designated meeting point afterward, the others were nowhere to be found. Thinking they might have gone ahead to the taxi area, she made her way there but was met with the same result: an empty spot and no sign of her team. Perplexed and frustrated, City flagged a cab back to her hotel. During the ride, she began to feel nauseous, likely from the previous night's drinking. She asked the driver to pull over and vomited before continuing the trip. Back in her hotel room, drained and irritated, she collapsed into bed and slept for hours. When City woke later that evening, she still felt unwell. She checked her phone, expecting an explanation from James, but there was no message. She tried to brush off the frustration, deciding to rest until morning. The next day, feeling refreshed, City immediately called James, only to find his phone turned off. Anxiety began to creep in. Had the prank gone wrong? Did she mess up? Would she still get paid? The thought of disappointing her family, whom she had promised money, weighed heavily on her. Desperation set in as she repeatedly tried contacting James throughout the day, but to no avail. With no way to reach the other actors or producers, City found herself alone and unsure of what to do next. City was utterly bewildered. Even if something had gone horribly wrong with the prank, she couldn't fathom why James and the team would treat her this way. After all, she had spent the last 4 weeks with them, traveling across the country, sharing meals, and even celebrating her birthday with a party James had organized. They'd had deep conversations about life, and she couldn't imagine what she could have done to warrant being ignored so completely. By the end of the day, with no word from anyone, City was heartbroken and embarrassed. Determined to leave it all behind, she decided to return home to her family the next day. True to her word, she packed her things, checked out of the hotel, and headed to the airport. But as she went through security, a commotion behind her drew her attention. She turned to see 6 heavily armed police officers sprinting in her direction. Instinctively, she stepped aside to let them pass, but to her shock, they stopped right in front of her, grabbed her, and placed her under arrest. Confused but relieved, City thought it must be another prank. She laughed nervously and said to one of the officers, "This is all part of the show, right?" But the officer's stern reply made her blood run cold. "No, this is real. You're under arrest." When the charges were explained to her, City felt as if the ground had been pulled from under her. She could barely process the words. Unbeknownst to City, the events following the prank had spiraled into tragedy. After City and Duan executed their prank and disappeared into the crowd, their target, who they believed to be an actor, had stumbled away from the kiosk, feeling unwell. He approached a receptionist, describing dizziness and disorientation. Alarmed by his condition, staff escorted him to the airport clinic. His symptoms escalated rapidly, and within minutes of arriving, he collapsed into a seizure. Despite the medical team's efforts, the man died en route to the hospital. Meanwhile, City and Duan were oblivious to the unfolding chaos. After completing the prank, they unknowingly missed each other at the meeting point and eventually returned to their separate hotels, assuming the team had left without them. However, James and the supposed producers had vanished for a very different reason. They weren't prank show creators at all. They were operatives working for the North Korean government, and the entire production had been a cover for an assassination plot. The target of their so-called prank was not an actor but Kim Jong-nam, the estranged brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The perfume City sprayed and the oil Duan applied were the components of VX nerve agent, a highly lethal chemical weapon. When combined, the substances formed a deadly poison, which caused the man's excruciating death within 20 minutes. City and Duan had been unwitting pawns in one of the most high-profile political assassinations of recent times. The operation had been meticulously planned. James, whose real identity was Rijyu, had specifically chosen City and Duan for their vulnerability. Both women were struggling financially and were easily persuaded into believing the elaborate ruse of a prank show. For weeks, they were groomed, made to believe in the authenticity of the production, and unknowingly rehearsed for the final act. The aftermath was a whirlwind of chaos and disbelief. City and Duan were both arrested and initially charged for life-taking, which carried a mandatory death sentence in Malaysia. However, surveillance footage and forensic analysis revealed the women's complete lack of awareness. Their casual handling of the VX nerve agent, touching their faces and clothing after the prank, proved they had no idea of the danger they were in. City's nausea after the prank, which she attributed to a hangover, was actually a mild exposure to the nerve agent. Fortunately, it wasn't enough to be fatal. The charges against the women were eventually dropped when the full extent of their manipulation came to light. However, the masterminds, James and his team, escaped without consequence, leaving City and Duan to grapple with the horrifying truth of their exploitation. North Korea has repeatedly denied involvement in the assassination, despite widespread evidence linking the operation to Kim Jong-un's regime. Did you see that twist coming? From a birthday party to a high-stakes assassination plot, this story proves that reality can be stranger and darker than fiction. What would you have done in City's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more jaw-dropping true stories. Until next time, stay curious and always question what's real.